All right, welcome to our post E3 podcast for the state of gaming, and we'll start with Nintendo.
Yeah, alright, so Nintendo, I think, had a pretty good showing.
Definitely.
It was exactly what I was hoping for. They really capitalized on the Switch and showing off a lot of unique titles so that, people would want to buy it for the holiday season. I think they nailed that. So one of the first things we saw was Mario and Rabbids, which we also saw at the Ubisoft conference. And, I mean, although personally it's not maybe my cup of tea, I'm not really a fan of the Rabbids. They're sort of like the minions of the video game universe, and there's something kind of like easy to hate about that.
Yeah, for sure.
But if you kind of look past it, I think that the gameplay mechanics of the like the kind of XCOM style combat that you have between the Bad Rabbids and the Mario characters, it's interesting. Like, for me personally, it's not a game that's going to sell the Switch to me, but it's intriguing. Like, I'm curious to see where they're going with that.
Yeah. I mean, it's something different, right? So
yeah,
it's always commendable when someone's taking chances, even if it's with the minions of video games, as you call them.
Yeah, and I mean, it's also interesting that this kind of opens the door to maybe more crossovers with Nintendo. What other possibilities can open up here?
Perhaps more interesting ones. Yeah.
We've seen Sega, right? We've seen Sonic and Mario, and now we're having Rabbids and Mario. I'm really curious to see where else we can see this go. So, I mean, there's not much else to say other than like, yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see it, but it's not that ace in the hole like the other things that were at the conference that we'll get to. So one thing that I think was easy to predict that was going to be at the show was the Zelda DLC.
Yeah, that was basically a guarantee. We knew there was more DLC coming, and might as well show it off at E3.
I mean, I think it looked like a lot of fun. It wasn't anything revolutionary. Like, you're going to be doing some trials. You're going to be, I don't know, just more of the same. But it's not really a bad thing when it comes to Zelda because the game was so good to begin with.
Yeah.
Really having more content is not necessarily a bad thing.
You know, a game's good when more of the same is all people want.
Yeah, they didn't need anything more complicated than that, really. So I'm okay to play some. I think there's some actually coming out fairly soon, and maybe even the next week from when this video comes out. And yeah, there's really not much else to say. We don't know too many details on the other DLC packs that are coming out later. We just mostly got the Trials one. And we saw that Rocket League is going to be coming to Switch, which I guess is starting to make it clear that the Switch is going to have some great third-party titles as well.
Because that's always been a problem with Nintendo, is they've kind of always missed out on, I mean, like Skyrim is another thing they're getting now, Rocket League. I'm sure there'll be more things coming.
For sure. There's for sure going to be a ton of ports of games that we're used to seeing on PlayStation and Xbox. They're going to make their way to the Switch, and I think that's good for people who maybe don't game as much, and maybe the Switch is one of their first consoles in a long time. And I mean, it also has the added ability of being portable, which obviously is a big selling point for the Switch. So aside from that, we saw Fire Emblem Warriors, which, it doesn't look like it's bringing too much new to the table to the whole Warriors franchise. Like, there's Hyrule Warriors, which was... I think the main thing about Hyrule Warriors that was really good was all the fan service that the game provided. I mean, the gameplay wasn't bad by any means, but it was a little bit... Like, that game was a bit samey. Like, you're just basically beating up minions. It's just more... It's more like the fan service, like I said. Like, you get the characters, the weapons, the locations that were really, like... It was really nice. And I think Fire Emblem's sort of going to play on those same things. I think it's focusing mostly on the Fates and Awakening games, which is a bit, I think, risky for the fan base. Although those are more recent, and it's more likely that people will know the characters. I think they're leaving out a lot of great content from older games.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping maybe those make an appearance. I hope it's not just going to be strictly DLC, but knowing how the other Hyrule Warriors game went, it's probably going to be a lot of DLC.
Well, if it makes money, right?
Exactly. All right, now we're getting to the juicy stuff. This is the stuff I want to be talking about right now, and that's Metroid Prime 4.
Yeah.
What a great logo! I am so excited to see anything that's.
I really want to play that logo.
Yeah, really. No, please. Honestly, that if it were any other game, I may have been a bit disappointed. But that's all I needed. I just wanted to know that a confirmation that they were doing something with Metroid. Like, the fact that they have something going on with Metroid Prime, more than anything, that's exciting. Like, it could have been another Metroid game entirely. I would have been happy. With Metroid Prime, like, I'm a very happy boy right now. Like,
I mean, that's all I would have liked to have seen for, like, a new Elder Scrolls 2.
Yep, just 6. Or Half-Life 3, just a 3.
Just
like,
a 3,
that's the equivalent of it for me. They just need to say Half-Life 3.
I just need to know, it's coming, and so that's why, despite not showing anything, it was still a good surprise, and definitely got a lot of people happy.
Yeah, you know that you do something right when it's just a number, and it's pretty much everyone's losing their shit. All right, so then next up we have well, I'm just gonna kind of combine these because like we sort of saw them back to back, but there's the new Kirby and the new Yoshi, which are sort of like the more like playful Nintendo characters, where it's like it's a simple side scroller, but there's usually some twist they bring in, and it seemed as though the new Kirby is bringing back the ability combinations that we saw in Crystal Shards in 64. And for me, that's super exciting because that was actually my favorite thing in any Kirby game was the experimenting with the different abilities and seeing what you can come up with.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case with the new Kirby, then honestly, I'm not even joking, that might be a bit of a console seller for me. Like, already Metroid Prime 4 is like...
Yeah, I think for now, Metroid Prime is going to be the one that's going to sell the system. But if Kirby ends up being good and the Yoshi game ends up being good, then suddenly you have a system with a pretty decent lineup of games.
Exactly. And the Yoshi one even has some characteristics of Yoshi's Story, the other N64 game. And a bit of Epic Yarn. Oh, no, sorry, that's Kirby's. There's just a lot of Yarn games. But Yoshi's Woolly World. So you have Yoshi's Woolly World kind of crossing with Yoshi's Story for a really interesting aesthetic. And I think that's the thing that we're seeing a lot with these Yoshi games and even the Kirby ones, is like these interesting aesthetics, whether it's clay, yarn, wool, whatever it be. I think that I'm curious to see what they do with it. I hope they can kind of make it a bit more original. It also would be nice if they made it play a lot more like maybe like Yoshi's Island. For me, it was like my favorite game starring Yoshi.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, we got about 2 or 3 other games left to talk about from Nintendo's conference. One of them being Xenoblade Chronicles 2. We saw some more of that, and I mean, a great JRPG is something I think that the Nintendo Switch library could use.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I mean, it does look a little like anime tropey from the trailer we saw, but I still don't think that will stop them from creating a great RPG.
No, for sure.
If the first one was anything to look at, I think we're gonna be okay with a sequel here. I'm not too worried. I would like to see maybe a bit more gameplay because this was very story driven. The trailer that we saw, maybe I'd like to see like a lot of the mechanics to see how the game works, and I think that would be a little more interesting at this point. But you know what? This is like we were just saying. Like, this is just another game to add to the library of exclusives the Switch will have, and it'll make it a really solid console. Okay, so next up, I'm gonna say the best for last here, but we have actually 2 interesting 3DS games. So we have another Metroid because boy are we blessed with
because one surprise announcement wasn't enough.
2, like you don't understand how long I've been waiting for another Metroid game, and then we get 2 announced on the same day. It was a lot for me to handle, and I think it was really smart to combine a Metroid Prime game with a side-scrolling one because it kind of reminded me of when Metroid Prime 1 came out alongside Fusion, and those were 2 great games, and that felt great, that feeling of having a great side-scrolling Metroid game and a 3D one, and they're sort of playing on the same thing. I mean, we don't know when 4's coming out, but...
Yeah, and it also pleases everybody, you know?
Exactly.
Because I'm sure there's people out there who prefer the side-scrolling or the ones who prefer the way Prime plays, but now you have both, you know? Like, you don't have to be like, oh, I really wish they made this kind of Metroid game. Well, here, you have both.
My only small complaint, I found this really strange, but during the demo they were showing at Nintendo's conference, it felt like they showed a bit too much of the 3DS one. Like, they were showing the evolution of the Metroid, and they showed, like, oh, this is the Type A Metroid. I'm like, alright, that's cool. But then they showed Type 2, Type 3, Type 4. I'm like, well, I mean, when they want to keep some of that a secret, unless there's a whole bunch more in that game.
Maybe it goes up to 20.
Yeah, maybe. But one thing I noticed, at least, I'm not the only person who noticed this, but I found it really cool that the music that they added to the game was actually some of Metroid Prime 1's music. I noticed Magmoor Caverns, which is actually a remix of Norfair from Super Metroid. That was really nice to notice, like that the music is going to be killer. So, you know what? Killer music, killer gameplay. I have no reason not to buy this game. And it shows that the 3DS library, which is already so strong, is going to have even more additions.
Yeah. Which is good, because with the Switch being portable, it could be seen in some ways as potentially a killer to its cousin handheld, you know?
Yeah.
Because, like, why have both if both are portable, you know? But you keep putting certain games on it that you can't get on the Switch, then you have reasons to keep your 3DS or buy one if you don't have one already.
Well, yeah, I think they're also trying to sell their new 2DS XL. Yeah. However, I'm pretty certain I can predict that the 3DS is going to start dying down a bit after this. My prediction is that this is the last E3 will be releasing a great lineup for 3DS. I think this is sort of the end. Because I do think that, although right now they can live together peacefully, I think the Switch will overtake the 3DS at some point.
Yeah.
The other game that they announced for 3DS was a remake of, or just a remaster of Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga, the first Mario and Luigi game we saw on Game Boy Advance, and it's gonna have a little extra game to it called Bowser's Minions, where you play as his minions. I mean, I don't really care much for the extra game. I mean, it might be cool, but it's more that I actually missed that Mario and Luigi. I played Partners in Time, and I sort of skipped over Superstar Saga. So this is like, I feel really lucky that I can replay it. And actually, a lot of people who like Mario as a franchise really think that Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga is one of the better, RPG versions of Mario.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is going to excite a lot of people, and there's a lot of people like myself who missed that game entirely, and now will have an opportunity to try it out.
Yeah.
All right, so now we have to talk about the elephant in the room, Mario Odyssey, which is, oh boy. I went from being somewhat interested to being incredibly excited for that game, and I think I'm not alone on that one.
No, for sure. Everything's looking good for that game so far. I mean, after E3, it was, even with the announcement of Metroid, everyone was just talking about
Mario Odyssey.
Well,
that one's coming out soon too. That's in October. But I think what I loved to see was when I was watching the live stream, I had like the comments, and people were trying to understand what game is this. So when the dinosaur showed up, they're like, "Is this Monster Hunter? What could it be?" And then all of a sudden you see the hat and you see the mustache and you're like, what the hell is this? And then, like, what a way to introduce a mechanic.
Yeah.
And then just showing him, like, becoming all these crazy things like a frog or, like, fire. And they showed gameplay. He was a pylon at one point. He could become people. It's just, like, the game aside, I mean, the game is going to be good, but now it's like I want to experiment and see how many things I can throw my hat at. How many things can I possess? And there's a whole slew of mechanics that come with that, because in the history of Mario, we've seen the ability to get different suits. You get the frog suit, you get the Tanuki suit, you get the fire flower.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's so many different abilities, but now there's almost limitless possibilities here. You can become anything. The abilities, and those abilities can help you solve puzzles, get you to different areas. It's just like that opens up so many possibilities for this game, and I'm fully excited. This is the one game I want the most on the Switch at the moment, because we haven't seen anything for Metroid Prime 4. But I'd rather wait till a lot of the other games come out so I could just sort of buy them together in bulk, because oh man, I cannot wait.
It's definitely the type of mechanic that, if it ends up working proper as it should, could really revolutionize Mario games. Similar to how Breath of the Wild just allowed you to completely interact with the open world and just do basically whatever you want. It seems like that kind of open interactivity is continuing on with Mario, and will probably become a theme of Nintendo games going forward. Like, who knows what crazy new interactive mechanic Metroid Prime will have. Like, I don't know what you can do with a Metroid game in that regard, but you never know, right?
I'm so excited to find out, though. Yeah. And I think there's the last thing we should really mention. This wasn't really a game that they showed off, but they mentioned it, and that was the Pokemon RPG for the Switch, which is like another fantasy game that no one thought was really going to exist. But now we know they're working on it. We don't know anything else, really, except for that it's a mainline game, which is great news, because I would have been a bit bummed if it was just another, like, sort of Coliseum style or stadium. But now we're getting a full-on Pokemon game, and if it's for a home console, it kind of gets your imagination working, thinking like, oh well, what are the possibilities here? Can we get really good graphics? Is it going to be maybe online multiplayer?
Like, how's it going to differentiate itself from Sun and Moon right now?
Exactly, and then we have Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon coming out as well. True. So is it just going to be another version of that, or are we going to get like an entirely different game? Is it going to be Kanto? Is it going to be is it going to be in the newest regions like Alola? Or it's really hard to tell, and I'm afraid that maybe my expectations might get too high for this, because we don't know anything. It's like Metroid Prime 4. It's just all we needed was a title, and that's it, and we're excited. But I think honestly that was all like the big news from Nintendo's conference, and I think it's all they needed. They didn't need anything else. Anything else would have been really filler at that point.
Yeah, I mean, compared to the other conferences, I feel like Nintendo probably had the most big unexpected announcements. They all had games to show off, and we'll get into this later, but I feel like overall most of the conferences were not disappointing, but not exciting.
Not surprising.
Yeah, not surprising.
This was a surprising conference, because they had the element of surprise on their side, whereas let's say Sony, which we'll get to later, was more of like we knew what we were going to see, but we just wanted to see what they had to show us. Yeah. So I think that was it. I think I was really happy in Nintendo's conference, and like I hoped, it may have convinced me to get a Switch.
Yeah. So. And I really think for the first time in a few years now, I mean, or maybe even since the launch of the original Wii, Nintendo's looking like it's on its way back up.
Yeah.
And it's got a system that isn't, ridiculed right off the bat. It's got great games already. I mean, mainly Zelda, and great games coming. And it's looks like Nintendo's making a comeback, which is great for everybody,
Yeah, Nintendo's got a very unique brand of games, and I'm really happy that they're back, because, I mean, although the Wii U the games weren't terrible, it's just like, now it feels like the Nintendo I knew when I was a kid, like the Nintendo that I got excited for every time they said anything, and like, I think this is just great. I think this is great for everyone.
Yeah, and they definitely needed a strong showing, and they delivered.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so that's it for part 1 with Nintendo. Next, we'll do Microsoft.
Absolutely. Oh man, I was trying not to have my nose